Hey, this is Braden with Pickleball Effect. Today we're doing a review of the new Diadem Icon V2. I had done a review of the original Icon about a year or so ago, so I'm very familiar with this paddle, and we'll be comparing these side by side in my playtest to see what the differences are performance-wise. But before we jump to the playtest, I do want to quickly talk about some of the differences between this version and the original. So the big changes they made to the paddle are in relation to the core. So if we were to cut this paddle in half, we would see three layers. We would see a layer of polymer honeycomb, a layer of what they're calling a proprietary film, and then another layer of honeycomb. So the proprietary film in the middle, they don't really tell us what that is, but I imagine it's some sort of foam. They say it's supposed to help dampen vibrations and just make the paddle a little more comfortable. And then additionally, they made the paddle thicker. So the new version is 13.7 millimeters. If you compare that to the original, you can see how much thicker it is. The original was 11 millimeters. So they're trying to make the paddle feel a little softer, make it easier to control, and increase the size of the sweet spot. The original paddle was a little harder to control and a very firm feel to it. And then additionally, they injected foam around the perimeter of the paddle. So we're seeing a lot of brands do this. It's getting very popular. I would imagine every paddle moving forward is going to have the same foam injection, but there's a lot of benefits to it, and especially for the Icon, because it's a molded paddle, meaning it has no edge guard. So when you don't have an edge guard around the perimeter, you lose some weight, which makes the paddle a little less stable and decreases the size of the sweet spot. But by injecting the foam around the perimeter, it kind of makes up for not having that weight from the edge guard. And then they also made some changes to the facing. So the original has this really smooth, kind of soft feel to it, and this one has a grittier feel to it. So I guess they used this same material and just added some grit paint to it to make it gritty. So that's something I'll be paying attention to in the play test. You know, if the grit lasts, and I'll be doing a spin test just to see how the spin performs overall. And then in addition to this, they also introduced a new shape. So the original paddle only had the one standard shape. They now are offering this in an elongated and a standard shape. So this is the elongated version, and then I have the standard version here, so you can see these side by side. The elongated version is 16.5 inches long, while the standard is 16. And then the elongated has a 5.5 inch handle, while the standard shape is 5.25. And then the weight is different between each paddle. So the elongated is 8.25 ounces, while the standard is 8 ounces. And the balance point is a little different between the two shapes. So the balance point is higher on the elongated, which is going to give it a higher swing weight, which is going to give you more power, but also make it a little harder to maneuver, while the standard will be a little easier to move around. So these are the Icon V2s. Let's go put them on the court and see how they play. After drilling and playing with both paddles over the course of 2 weeks, here's my review of their performance. I'll start by talking about the power level of the paddles, then I'll talk about what I liked and didn't like about them. The Icon is Diadem's power paddle, but the changes they made to them on paper made me think they were going to play a little slower than their original model. It turns out I was wrong. To test the power of each paddle, I hit a series of serves and measured how hard I was hitting the ball with my speed gun. Then I took the average speed. I did this test with the original and the new Icons along with Diadem's Warrior Edge, which I consider to be an all-court type paddle, to give us some perspective on how hard these hit in general. The average speed of the original Icon was 46.8 miles per hour, while the V2s came in at 46.6 and 47 miles per hour. Then to finish it off, the Edge had an average speed of 44 miles per hour. The V2s could hit just as hard as the original Icon despite the changes Diadem made to make it feel softer, and they're considerably faster than the Edge. This surprised me, but I think this is a great thing for the paddle to maintain the same level of power while feeling softer at impact. Let's talk about what I liked about the paddle now. Thinner core paddles of the past were never super attractive to me and required more skill to use since they had smaller sweet spots and weren't near as stable and forgiving as 16mm paddles. But there are a few out there that are good, like the Yola CFS 14s and now the Icon V2s. The foam around the edge does increase the size of the sweet spot and makes them much easier to play with and not feel like you're hitting a ton of unforced errors. It's noticeably more forgiving and stable than the original while still maintaining that same level of power. I consider these some of the better blade style paddles I played. It has a softer, more comfortable feel compared to the hard, firm feel of other blade style paddles that we see from brands like Gearbox and ProKennex. I'm categorizing these as power paddles, though they're not quite as powerful as some of the big hitters out there like the Black Ace and the Power Airs, but it's still a power paddle, though it may fall on the lighter power side of that category, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It offers a better feel and is more comfortable than other power paddles out there. The ball jumps off the face quickly, which is especially great for counters and speed ups and makes serves and deep returns easy. It was effortless to disguise attacks at the net and keep my speed ups low. It didn't take much to put a little pace on the ball, which made flicks and rolls more deadly. Plus the spin wasn't bad either, which helped keep more attacks in play. My spin test put them in line with the level of the original carbon paddles and many of the other Gen 1 raw carbon fiber paddles, though they aren't quite to the same level that we're seeing from thermoformed paddles. The grit on the paddle did wear down a little bit during my 2 weeks playing with them, though it didn't really seem to make them any less spinny because they weren't really that gritty in the first place anyway. The feel of the paddle is much softer compared to the original model, but it still maintains the identity of a blade style paddle with a little firmer feel. If you've played with the Yola Solaire or the Hyperion CFS14, then the softness of the Icon V2 is somewhere in between those paddles and the original Icon. So it's softer and easier to control than the original, but it's not a plush feel. I always had a hard time softening up aggressive dinks with the original Icon, but didn't have that issue with this one. For some reason that stuck out to me when I was playing with them. The V2 standard model has a lower swing weight and moves very fast in your hands. It has a high level of speed and power that is nice. No question I was quicker on volleys and was more effective in hand battles and countering speed ups. The elongated version does feel a little heavier than the standard model, but it feels more like a normal weight and balance while the standard version is headlight. In general, they both moved well because of the thinner frame and edgeless design. This is definitely an advantage that edgeless paddles have. Now let's talk about what I didn't like. There are the typical challenges of using a power paddle like less consistency on thirds and resets, and the V2s weren't immune to that. There's certainly an adjustment period to get used to the extra pop, though the larger sweet spot and improved feel made these areas better than the original Icon. I've been recently playing with more power-oriented paddles, and I still had a decent adjustment time to get used to the pop these had. I was able to adjust my dinks and soft shots pretty well for the most part, though they would get away from me more than I like sometimes. When I did hit a poor soft shot, it was because of the extra pop and not usually because of missing the sweet spot. The paddles use smaller honeycomb cells in the core, which is part of the reason they're more poppy and jumpy at impact, which is great for counters and hand battles, but it reduces the dwell time of the ball on the paddle, so some finesse shots like topspin dinks off the bounce or volley were harder to execute because the ball jumped off so quickly. Last thing I'll mention here is about the sweet spot. The sweet spot is bigger than the original Icon, which makes the paddle accessible to more players. However, I would say that the sweet spot isn't quite as good as the 14mm thermoformed paddles from brands like 6-0, Carbon, and Vatic Pro, but these paddles aren't as powerful as the Icon, so it's a bit of a trade-off there. Overall, these paddles do have a higher skill ceiling and probably aren't the best for lower skilled players that need more help with controlling the ball. So here's my recommendation. I like these more than the original version. I would prefer the feel of these and think the standard version in particular has a combination of power and speed that is attractive. I think the power is there and they feel more comfortable than the harsh feeling of Power Airs and the ProConnex Black Ace. In fact, I would take these over the Power Airs and Black Ace if those were my only options. If you're playing with the original Icon right now, then I think it's worth upgrading, and if you have a hard time controlling one of those super power paddles, then I think this is a good option too. If you're playing with an all-court type paddle and are craving a little more power, then this one may fit the bill. It gives you that power paddle experience without committing to the most powerful paddle available. However, if you're coming from a softer 16mm paddle, then these are probably going to be too poppy for you, and I would recommend something else that isn't quite as powerful. And if you don't have a developed soft game or prefer a plush feel, then these probably aren't the right ones for you either. So that's everything I have for you. I hope this helps.